Hi, I'm Kevin Tame, and welcome to The Hacktivist. Today I'm playing the Stinson CI deck versus Ed Kim, and let's jump right into this match. I'm actually going to be playing this opponent twice against the same deck, so stick around and you can see both matches. Okay, so this is a pretty decent starting hand. I like seeing Ultraviolet Clearance. It would have been better if I had Sure Gamble. It's kind of a questionable pick, but I go ahead and I install Jeeves, and then I protect my R&D and then gain a credit because I want to fire Ultraviolet Clearance. I actually won't probably res the R&D ice unless it's like an indexing. So my opponent comes in and has a scrubber, goes ahead and trashes Jeeves, which is not great, but it's also not horrible either because it puts my opponent on 4 credits, and having my opponent on 4 credits isn't a bad thing. What I really want to do now is I want to kind of dig for Stinson. Because I have two economic warfares in hand, so if my opponent can't get their economy going up, especially here because my opponent is making runs and then trashing stuff, then it's a perfect time for Stinson to fire. Seeing the MCA austerity might be a tip that I'm on a Stinson deck, but it's really hard to tell nowadays. What they really need to see is the reversed accounts or the economic warfare. So my opponent missed the scrubber here. That's why I'm checking the log to see that they had missed it when they trashed MCA austerity. So my opponent sees my other MCA austerity, which is kind of a pain because now I've lost 2 of them. Now my opponent sees the reversed accounts. I don't know if that was like the best decision to trash because now my opponent's on 1 credit, and if I see Stinson, obviously it's going to be really painful for them. So I'm digging here aggressively for Stinson. And this right here was a total misplay. By clicking twice, I was kind of like aggressively clicking. I should have just clicked once, saw Stinson, installed, and played. But to recover, I play a scarcity just in case my opponent, to try and keep my opponent down on credits. Here my opponent, this was a misplay I think on my opponent's part. They should have they shouldn't have played they should have just clicked up to protect the Stinson play, because the Stinson play is what I think really can lose you the game. So I play Ultraviolet, and then I play Hedge Fund, and now I'm on 30 credits, and they're on 2. It's a huge swing that is going to be difficult for them to recover from. And I happen to top deck an MCA austerity, and there's a touring there, and my opponent doesn't have a Black Orchestra, so the touring basically keeps them out at this point. So I go ahead and I opt to install one on HQ just to protect HQ, and I'm going to go ahead and install on server 2 next turn when I click MCA to protect it even more. And what I need to do now is just find an elective upgrades so that I can score it and then score my Vitruviuses really quickly, or even score my with Biotic score out the corporate sales team. This Fem didn't work out the best because it's a little cheaper, I guess, for Architect, and I'm not sure if trashing the Stinson was the best call there, because I already fired it, and really all you need to do is ever fire Stinson. But my opponent had 2 scrubbers, so it's not that big a deal. So I find the elective upgrades, and so now I just am going to just draw up, and then it might have been a misplay here. I probably should have clicked MCA austerity to give my opponent only 3 clicks, but I'm going to go ahead and score the elective upgrades. And then it puts my opponent on obviously a timer they have to win within the next 2 turns, which is very possible. They could access cards from HQ, and protecting HQ right now is Ichi, which my opponent can break, and then Enigma. So my opponent needs to be able to find a Black Orchestra. or whatever his decoder is. So I go ahead and can score the Vitruvius here for the win. Pretty straightforward. Get Stinson off, make a lot of money, get MCA. Sometimes this one was simpler, I think, because you don't have to fight. If you have to work around reversed accounts, it makes it a lot more difficult. Well, let's jump right into this next match. So I go ahead and I mulligan this. Seeing an early scarcity is always really great, especially when I know my opponent is playing several resources. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to, I was torn there because I want to be on 6 credits in case I need to fire something like an ultraviolet. But it was probably better just to have played scarcity turn 1 so that my opponent went a little more poor. So my opponent, even right there, my opponent goes ahead and gets 2 scrubbers out. I should have once again played the scarcity. So I'm a little bummed that my opponent, that I didn't foresee like my opponent installing all this stuff. Plus I don't have any transactions in the archives to fire Stinson. And I could lose, some of my important cards here. My opponent does click up, so I go ahead and play ultraviolet, and my plan here is to hopefully hit my opponent here with an economic warfare and be able to fire Stinson off in this next turn. So I don't res the touring here because my opponent can break it with David. I go ahead and let my opponent trash all this stuff. What I should have maybe done though, well, I maybe should have res it just to tax them out of those credits. I happen to get really lucky here and find another Stinson right away. And that, that really helps me out here. So what I'm going to do is try and set up an MCA austerity for next turn and hopefully keep my opponent out with vanilla for a little bit. But here I'm able to actually jam out an efficiency committee. And what's nice about efficiency committee, if you can score that early, you are able to Stinson your opponent several times or get off like a really robust reversed accounts. So like even if they have like 16 credits, you're still able to do it. Or even with economic warfares, play 3 economic warfares, which is 12 credits, and then fire off Stinson. So here I'm debating like where I want to put Jeeves. And I don't really have a place to put Jeeves yet, and I don't want to put MCA austerity in yet. So I just go ahead and I draw up to try and, find my pieces. So my opponent's doing a really good job in this match in, banking their credits. Basically what I call this is offshoring. So if I do fire, economic warfare or reversed accounts or anything like that, my opponent is able to go in and, they're able to recover quickly with liberated. So my opponent, here's another place where I probably should have rezzed the touring, because then it forces my opponent to use the David counters, because I really want my opponent to to waste those. And so I go ahead and I use my efficiency committees to really bring the credits down on my opponent. I play 3 economic warfares. I am able to install an MCA and click it to have them lose a click. This is going to be actually a little painful for my opponent. I think they have to click through this. And this actually allows me to, once again, fire off Stinson again. But I don't think I have any transactions in archives to fire, unfortunately. And I don't know why my opponent installed Film Critic. I guess they could assume that I'm on Ikoa project, but I'm not, so it seems like maybe a little bit of a misplay, but they just don't know that. So what I'm searching now for is an elective upgrades, because if I can score an elective upgrades, I'm able to keep my So my opponent decides here that's a smart move to just use, David to break the end the run. I can't really afford to res that piece of ice, but luckily I top decked a reversed account, so I'm going to go ahead and just set that up so that I can use it next turn. Because what I want to do here is I want to fire off this reversed counts, like advance it. I don't really care about the bad pub. I'm just going to take it because they're not. It's not that valuable to me. Even here, I just fire it just once is good enough. And then I play my IPO to recover. So now my opponent's in a really bad position here. They're on 2 credits. I'm able to, they really can't get into this remote right now, or it will cost them a lot. I'm able to advance this Vitruvius, and then hopefully what I can do is I can either, jam out a, so my plan here is to, see what I do there is I put down some Jeeves so that I can easily score out this corporate sales team. So my opponent has to either come in and trash both of them. So my opponent trashes that one, and my opponent trashes that one as well, which is fine. Now it just forces me to use my biotic, but that wastes 2 clicks of my opponent and a bunch of money, which is basically what I'm trying to do anyways, is force them to not have the money to come and contest. So it's it works both ways. 1, it redirects them, and 2, it also helps me to be able to score if it's still around. If not, I can still just biotic it out. And I have another biotic in hand, so I'm able to just biotic out the Vitruvius and win the game. And obviously, when you have so much money, it makes it pretty easy to use to pay for the biotics and res all of this ice. Stinson is just a crazy card with ultraviolet and IPO. There's a little bit of tension I have that they're both kind of end your turn, if you will, and so sometimes it's kind of awkward if you have both in the bin. And you have a lot of clicks, you can't fire them both. So that's why the hedge funds are there, obviously. Anyways, these are some great matches. I think my opponent, the first match, was just getting used to it, and the second match they played much better. I don't know if installing the scrubbers and the film critic is the right play. I think it's better to just maintain credits and do strategic runs like stim hacking the remote to kill the MCA austerity at the right time. Also pressuring on R&D and HQ. I think rebirth is also really helpful in this instance because you're able to rebirth into Omar and be able to hit HQ a bunch and pick off some agendas. Well, anyways, thanks for watching the match. If you have any questions or comments or ways that I could play better, please let me know. Thanks. Bye.